everyone, today I'm going to be showing you how to make Christmas decorations with your pet's footprints in them. This is a very easy and simple task to do, and it only has 3 ingredients. So to make this, you're going to need a large bowl, you're going to need flour, preferably plain flour, you're going to need a lot of salt, and you're going to need some sort of scoop measurement. This recipe uses a 2:2:1 ratio. So you're going to have 2 lots of flour, 2 lots of salt, and 1 lot of water, whatever measurement you use. So in this, I'm using a scoop, I think it's a 1 cup scoop, just because that's what was nearby. And because I've got several animals, I want them each to have their own little decoration. When all your ingredients are in the bowl together, use a wooden spoon to mix it until you have a sort of doughy texture like this. And then you're going to turn it out onto a floured desktop and you're going to knead it. To knead dough, what you do is you have to bring it all together as best as you can, and then you have to take the front part and you're going to fold it into the back. So you pick up the front, fold it with the heels of your palms, and you just keep doing that until it's just one smooth texture. When you're done kneading the dough, what you're going to do is you're going to take a rolling pin and you're going to roll it out as flat as you can. Now, you don't want it to be paper thin, you want it to be thick enough that when the animal puts their foot onto it, there's enough room for it to sink in and leave an impression without going all the way through. This dough can be quite soft, so you have to be careful not to rip it like I started doing here by accident, but if you just go over it a few times you can hide that and it'll be fine. If you find your dough is a little bit too sticky and it's sticking to the table or it's sticking to the rolling pin, flour the rolling pin a bit more and make sure to add a little bit more flour to it and knead it again. I then used an egg cup to cut out holes because I wanted it to be small enough to go on my tree, because my tree is only about 1.5 feet tall. So I used a little egg cup so that it doesn't get too weighed down with all the animals' names on it. When you have all your pieces cut, remove the dough from in between to separate them, and then you're going to want to put holes into them. Make sure the hole is big enough for you to put the ribbon through, even if it rises slightly after it's cooked. So I like to use a biro because it's wide enough to definitely let the ribbon through, and if I wiggle it around after making the hole, it'll definitely stay big enough even after baking to fit the ribbon through. Make sure not to go too close to the edge because it'll become brittle and then it may just break when you put the ribbon through and try to hang it up. Once all of them have holes in them, you can then take your animal that you're going to be using for the footprints. Today our very helpful volunteer is going to be Mac, so I want to have a footprint from Mac into these that I can use for all of the lizards. So instead of doing a footprint per animal, I have some baby lizards that I'm just not comfortable trying to get them to do a footprint. They're too small, they're too delicate, and I don't want to risk stressing them. Whereas Mac I use for educational talks. I have him everywhere all the time. He's fairly chill and he's heavy, so he'd do really good footprints. So all of his footprints are going to be used for all of the lizards. When doing the footprints, you have to be very, 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 very gentle. This is a very soft dough, so it doesn't take much pressure to make a footprint, but also keep in mind that a lizard's toes are very, very tiny and it doesn't take much pressure for you to hurt them. So what I'm going to do is I'm putting the foot straight onto the flat piece of dough, and I'm going to just very gently with my finger just press down on the backs of the toes so I can make a little footprint like you can see in the bottom left there. Make sure not to try and over-restrain your animal because you don't want to stress them that they're just going to want to run away and you don't want to end up accidentally hurting them. Do it all at your animal's pace and you'll get your footprints eventually. You may want to use a skewer or toothpick of some kind to sharpen the details of the toes because when this cooks it will be expanding slightly and you don't want to lose any of those fine details. When everything is ready to go, I put it onto a baking sheet on a tray and I'm going to put it into the oven at 200 for 10 minutes. While those are baking, I'm taking my spare dough and I'm going to roll it out all over again, this time to get the footprints of my dogs. So for the dogs, I definitely want it to be thicker than I did for the lizards because they're heavier and they might put more of an indent in it. And also I want the circles to be much bigger, so I'm using a bigger beaker for that. In the case of smaller dogs like Tia, you can pick them up and you can just put their paws straight into the dough while it's still on the counter. You want slightly more pressure than you did with the lizard, or you can just let them put their full weight on it, but make sure their nails don't accidentally put holes through the dough. Once you have your footprints, you can put the hole into it, you can put it onto a baking sheet, into the oven for about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how thick you put the dough. Although these imprints are a lot better than the lizard's ones, I still went around the edge with the skewer doing little dots on the outline, just so I know exactly where it is, so that at the end when I'm colouring it in, I'll have an easier time trying to find out which parts are toes and which part was me moving it making a fingerprint. At this point the lizard footprints are ready to go, so they're able to be taken out of the oven and put onto a wire rack to cool. And as you can see here, some of them came out pretty well, although I was going to have to leave them to cool down before I could show any better. I then rolled out the last of the dough again and made some more circles, this time for Toby and Beauty. Toby and Beauty are far too big to be lifting up onto a counter, so I'm instead putting them onto a placemat so I can bring it down to their level so they can just put their footprints on the floor. Something that's really important with dogs that you need to take note of that you won't need to take note of with lizards: dogs will try to eat this. Do not let your dog eat this. This is not safe to eat. This can cause sodium poisoning. Sodium poisoning can result in death. Do not let your dog eat this. Toby is trained that when I hold his face like that, he will not eat anything, but he will do a sneaky lick like that. Again, just like with Tia, you put the paw right in the middle, you press down on the toes to get a good imprint, and then you take it straight back up so you don't smudge the edges. When you have all of your footprints done, you can take away the entire thing and praise them for being really good and not eating it. Anyone who's seen videos that have Beauty in them before will know that Beauty is the most recent acquisition in this house, and Beauty isn't all that good when it comes to the training and aggression. Beauty is severely food aggressive, so as a precaution I'm putting a muzzle on her, and she always wears a collar that has a handle on it so someone can grab her if they need to. If you are not an adult, please get an adult to help you if you're dealing with animals and food. Please do not take stupid risks for the sake of having something cool. One of the main reasons why I'm doing this is because I'm specifically trying to train her out of her food aggression. So this is a good example of something to do because she's muzzled and because she gets to see that it's something that smells like food, it's something she wants, but it's not something she's allowed. And she'll get real food afterwards. But only if she doesn't react aggressively. Beauty's paw prints have to be done slightly more crookedly because her nails are so long, because again we're working on getting her to a point where she'll let me clip them. But we're getting there and she is doing much better than she used to. A lot of praise in between footprints, and as soon as the stuff is out of the way and not able to be eaten, I can take off her muzzle and give her a whole lot of praise to say she was super good and she was great for not being aggressive in the slightest. And as you can see for Beauty, the next best thing other than food is praise. Just like Tia's, I'll then put dotted lines around the actual sections of the paw, so in case it distorts while baking, I can still tell where the paw was. And then I put the hole in the edge of it just to make sure that I have a space for the ribbon to go through. With the bigger ones for paw prints, you'd want to make sure to give it more of a border so that it doesn't accidentally just snap off and break when you try to hang it on the tree. Tia's ones are now baked, so you can see that they came out fairly well. They're really hot, so I'm not going to burn myself like I did on the lizard ones. I'm going to put these on a spoon to show you properly. You can see that they've got the dips of where her paws went in, but you can also see the dotted lines of where I did, so that we can see properly the shape of them. And now that the lizard ones are cooled as well, you can see those ones too. So the one on the left is a little more messy because it's a back foot, whereas the one in the middle is a front foot, and I don't know which one the one on the right was because it didn't turn out quite right, but this is why you make extra in case some of them go wrong. I then got a silver and bronze metallic marker, and I'm going to use those just to fill in the footprint itself and to write the names and date on the back. So the silver one worked well, but the gold one worked a lot better, or gold or bronze, whatever colour it is. And I think it's just because it's darker, it turned out much nicer and it seemed much shinier. So I preferred it, but I wanted to do roughly a 50-50 mix of the silver ones and the bronzy ones. So I filled out all of them with all of the lizards' names and 2020. And what I'm going to attempt to do is see if I can preserve these over the year until next Christmas. And if they're still okay by next Christmas, I'll hang them up on the next tree. But because they are like flour and such, they might end up going moldy, and you might just have to end up throwing these out at the end of Christmas, but sure, worst case scenario, we'll just make them again next year. Also, a side note, if you're ever doing a video and your mother's making coffee, tell her so she doesn't put coffee down right in the middle of where you're doing a video and then hastily try to take it back as if that's going to fix the video. I then did all the ones for the snakes. So the snakes ones had like a little S or you could say it was a tiny snake, up to interpretation on the back, and then their names in 2020 on the other side. So at the end we had everyone's names on their decorations and we just had to put in the ribbons. So I got some green and red ribbons from a craft store nearby. They were just thin enough to fit through the hole and I just tied a knot at the top so they can hang off the little branches of the tree. But you can use string or whatever else you want instead if you prefer. I just like ribbons because I think they look Christmassy. And that's it done! So you can hang them off your tree and you can put in some lights and some snake skin as tinsel and you've got a lovely little reptile themed tree. Like I said, I'm not too sure how good these store, so my plan is to wrap them in cling film and then put them in an airtight bag and see if they'll survive the year in the attic and see how they go for next year. If they don't survive, I'll say it next year when I make this video again, and if they do survive, then I will let you know. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope everyone has a good Christmas.